Welcome back, Chippers, to another edition of Chippers TV. I'm going to take this piece of wood here and we're going to go ahead and we're going to build a cell phone charging and viewing stand. Okay, we got a hole in the middle there to put our power cord through so we can actually charge it. We got the pegs here that's going to hold our phone. You can have it upright or you can have it on its side. And I've got it at a 30-degree angle, which is what I tested out, which is the best for all cell phones. So you can actually prop it up, put it down, and have all your video meetings and your Zoom classes using your phone. So what we're going to do first is the measurements. What I've come up with for this design is the upright is going to be 8 inches and the base is going to be 4 inches. So we got to remember that on a saw, the width of the blade is what we need to make sure. So when I measure this out, we got to make sure that we have at least 1/8 of an inch between it for the saw blade. So I'm going to measure this out, and what I've already measured is I've made it 1 1/4 inches, 1 foot and 1/4 inch right there. If you can see that. And then we're going to go ahead and cut that, and then we're going to take it, and the width that we're going to use is going to be 3.5. Okay, so we're going to have to cut this down on the table saw once we get done. So first we're going to take the miter saw and we're going to cut this first piece. And before we use power tools or hand tools, we always put on our safety glasses. Take this, we'll slide this in here. This has an LED light on it that we can use that's going to tell us when we're lined up. So we're going to line this up. So if I bring the saw blade down, miter saw, and so I don't need the full width. So I'll bring it down and you can see where that light comes on right on our line. So we have that lined up, so that's where we want to cut. So take this, tighten this down to hold our board in place, make sure we're square. Hold that in place, got our hands out of the way. So we've got that cut. So now we're going to go over to the table saw and we're going to cut this down. Okay, so now we're over at the table saw, and remember we wanted the width to be 3.5. So we actually want to take that and come out to 3.5. So this is how wide our base and that's going to be. So we got to come over here, and power is unplugged. Power is unplugged before we do any adjustments. So I'm going to set this up and get the fence set for 3.5. So right there, 3.5. Lock this in place. Plug our power in. And then we're going to cut this piece down. Okay, as always, we always wait for the blade to stop before we touch anything. So we're going to unplug our power. And we'll get our piece, and then we're going to head back over to the miter saw, and then we're going to cut our base off from our upright. Okay, now we're back over at the miter saw. We cut down our piece to the width that we want, but now we've got to cut this into 2 pieces. We've got to have our base that's going to be 4 inches and our upright that's going to be 8 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and measure this. And we're going to come up to 8 inches. And there's our 8-inch mark right there. And I'll make a mark there. Take my square, square that off, and that's going to be our 2 pieces. This is going to be our upright, and this is actually going to be our base. So what we got to do again is we got to go ahead and set this up to cut this. So again, safety glasses before we use hand tools or power tools. Turn on our little light. We'll get this lined up. Can you see where the blade is? So we got to move that over. We got it right on our line, so we're going to tighten this up. Hands out of the way, and we're going to cut it. So now we got our two pieces. We got our upright and we got our base. We're going to go like that. So the next thing we got to do is we actually have to take it and we're going to actually cut a 30-degree angle on this, which gives us our angle so our upright hangs over the base. So the weight of your cell phone will be pushing back on the base. So we got to go ahead and reset the saw to go ahead and get a 30-degree angle. Okay, so now we've got to get a 30-degree angle. So I've got a pre-cut piece here to show you that there's our 30 degrees. So that's what we got to do on our base here to do the same thing. So what we have to do is we have to take our miter saw, got to loosen the back up, and if you look right here, you can see 0 to 45, 0 to 45, and we got to go to 30. So I'm going to take this, loosen this up, turn our saw over to 30, and tighten that back up. So we got that tight. So now we got to take our piece and we're actually going to cut our 30-degree angle. Okay, so now we've got our miter saw set at 30 degrees. I've turned on my little LED light, and if you look down here, when I bring this down, you can see where the light is coming down. So we're going to move this over just a little bit because we want it to cut it to the edge. So we've got that set. So we're going to go ahead and cut that. So we have that cut now, so we have our angle for our top bit. Okay, so that's our 30 degrees. So the next thing we got to do is we're going to go ahead and mark out where we're going to drill our holes to put our pegs in. So now we got to mark out where we're actually going to put our holes for our dowels to go in and where we're going to drill our center hole. And what the main thing you want to know is make sure that your angled side is down so the narrow side is up, because this is going to be your top. So you want to make sure you drill the holes on the correct side. So what I've got is I've preset two combination squares, one for the depth that I want to go in and one for the coming in from the side to actually mark where we're going to put our pegs. So what I'm going to do with that, take that, and I'm going to make a mark right here, square, and I'm going to draw that across, and then I'm going to take my other preset and I'll put that on the side, and you see where that groove is? I'm going to line that up in the middle there and make a mark there. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. That lined up, and make a mark there. So that's where we're going to drill our two holes that are actually going to hold our dowels. So now coming up from the bottom, we've got to come up and figure out where we're going to put our center hole. So what I'm going to do with that is, and so we went ahead and decided that it was going to be 3.5. So we got to figure out what half of 3.5 is. Okay, so we've decided it was 3.5, as I was saying, so we got to figure out what half of that is, because we want to drill our hole in the middle, and so that's going to come out to 1 3/4 right there. So we're going to make a mark at 1 3/4, and to make sure that we're up high enough from the base here to drill our hole through, I want to make sure that I've got this up and that we actually drill it in the right spot. So we're going to put that right there, and that's where we're going to do that. Now the other thing we got to do is for this to stand on its base, we're going to hook it, we're going to have to bind this together, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to use 2 screws and we're going to use glue. But you want to make sure, because of your angle, that you get your screws back far enough to go in so it doesn't split your wood and the screw doesn't come out. So what I've got there is I've got this preset, and we're going to use this little hole here for the depth that we're going to go in. So we're going to come in from the side, and I'll make a mark and do the same on the other side. So now we know where we're going to actually drill our holes for there, and we'll be set. So the next thing we want to do is we want to come over to the drill press, and we're going to cut the holes for our dowels. We're at the drill press now, and I've got the table preset. This moves up and down. So if I take that up, lock that back in place, and then we'll check it again. And it's still too much. A little bit more, because we don't want to go all the way through the board. So there's our depth. And remember, we got our marks here, so we're going to go ahead and start this, and we're going to go ahead and drill these 2 holes. That's where our dowels are going to go, right in there. Okay, so the next thing we got to do is we got to cut this out, and we want to pre-drill the base so we're ready to put the screws in, and then we'll actually cut the dowels. So what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to drill our holes for our base. So we want to go all the way through so we can make sure that we go all the way through, and then we're going to countersink those, and I'll show you what the countersink looks like when we do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill that in, but I want to make sure I'm over the table so I don't drill through the table. So we line up the next one. Get your fingers out of the way. So we got that. This is a countersink, and what this is going to do is allow us to put our screws in, and the screws will sit underneath the surface so it doesn't scratch your table. So I'm going to take that, put that in, and we're going to set it on here, line the drill bit up, and we'll do the same on this side. And if you see what that did, that's what they call a countersink. So when we put our screws in, they're going to sit below the surface so it doesn't scratch. So now we want to put in our hole for our power cord. This is where the power cord is going to come from behind if you're charging it. We're going to use a 1/2 inch. So this is the size, so make sure that the hole is big enough to actually fit Android cables and also Apple cables. The newer Apple cables and that are a little bit narrower, but this allows any type of plug to go through. So we're going to put that in. And again, we're only going to drill just over halfway through and then flip it over and finish the hole so we don't split the wood. So we're going to go ahead and start on that. We line our bit up, make sure we're straight up and down. And we drilled all the way through the other side, so then I can take my tip of my bit and I can put that in there. And that gets us lined up. And now we've got our hole drilled out all the way through so we can put our power cord through. So then we got to cut out our dowels, and then we're going to sand these down. But the other thing that we're going to do is I like the rounded top instead of the square top, so we're going to round that off. And the way we're going to do that, just like in some of the other videos, I take a lid, and what I've done is I put 2 marks on the side there. One goes on the side and one goes on the top, and then we'll make our circle, and we'll take that over and we'll be able to sand that down on the belt sander. So we got this lined up, so you can see that I've got my black mark there that's on the side right there, and my black mark there on the top. This allows us to make sure that both sides are going to come out the same. So I round that off, and I line up the other side and do the same thing. Get that lined up. and we round that off. And that gives us our rounded edges that we're going to actually sand around so they'll be rounded on the side. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the belt sander and sand these down and take off our marks. Now we're at the belt sander, and what we're going to do here is we're going to smooth this out and round our edges on our top. As you can see, there's some rough parts in the wood, so we're going to sand those down also, and this will sand off our pencil marks where we marked it. And on the sides, we're going to sand it down to get rid of the saw blade marks, and then we can use our palm sander or finish sander to finish it off. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the disc part of this sander, which is here, versus the belt, and we're going to round these edges. So turn this on. Okay, so now we've got our rounded edges, and when we put this together, it's going to sit like that, and that's going to be how our cell phone stand is going to hold together. So now we're going to go over, and what we're going to do is we're going to run the finish sander over top of it, and then we're going to put a little glue on it and actually put it together. Okay, so now we've got our palm sander or our finish sander, so we're going to sand this down and smooth this out with a 120 grit sandpaper, and we're going to clean up our edges that we made our rounded edges. So we're going to do that real quick. So we got that all sanded down now. So the next thing we got to do is we're going to go ahead and cut our dowels, and then we're going to go ahead and put this together. Now we're going to cut the dowel. The dowel that I used is, you probably won't be able to see it, but it's 5/16, okay? So it's 5/16 round. So that's what that is, and that's what we're going to use to actually hold the cell phone. And the length of that, because of the pre-drilled holes that we're going to tap these into, we want to do at least 1 1/4 inches, and we need 2 of these. So I'm going to measure this out, and we'll get our 1 1/4 right there, and then I'm going to mark that, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut that, and I'll use the first one as the actual marker to cut the second one. So we get our miter saw, and we want to go straight up and down, so we're going to get that lined up. We get the one cut. So now we got to cut the second one, and we're going to mark that by lining them up and making a pencil mark on it right there, so we have them the same length. So we've got that cut. So now we're going to cut the next one. So we get that lined up. So now we have our two dowels, and what we're going to have to do is we'll have to sand those down because we got some sharp edges in that. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the stand together, and these will be the last parts that we put in. Okay, so now we're going to put it together, and what I used is some construction screws, coarse thread, 1 1/4 inch to go through our board and go through. And this particular brand that I used is Spax, and it's got the diamond head, so it makes sure that the screws go in correctly. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a little glue on it, because we're going to use both the screws and the glue to hold it. So I get a little bit of glue, so I'm going to spread that out just a little bit on there. That's just to give it some added adhesion. And then what we're going to do is we're going to line this up, and what I did is I pre-started the screws, and I've got them just sticking out on the back side so we can put this together. So I'm going to line this up. I'm going to hold that together like that. Take our drill and our bit, and we're going to get that lined up. And then we're going to do the same. And we're going to make sure that we get them snug. We don't want to over tighten them. So now we've got it put together, and there's our 30-degree angle that we have. So the last thing we got to do here is sand it a little bit, and then we'll put in our dowels. Okay, so now we've got our dowels, and we want to put those in. So I'm going to put those in, and we're going to pound them in with a hammer. And remember, what I did is I put a little bit of glue in each one of these holes to help hold it. And the thing that you want to remember is whatever size dowel you use, you want to make sure that you actually drill your hole just a little bit smaller, because you don't want it floating around in there, because you want both it to be hold with the hole and with the glue. So then we take our dowel, put that in there, and then we pound that in, and we do the same on the other side. And we want to wipe off any excess glue so when we put our finish on, it won't stand out. So there we go. There we have it, the finished product. Again, you can stain it, paint it, draw on it, and like the other one, had the artwork put on that one. So it started out like that. They did the artwork on it, or you can have it one color or whatever you want. So now what we're going to do is go in and show you how this actually sets up on your phone. So that's what we completed. The one that I had in the garage that I was completing, I actually just stained it, and then I put a clear lacquer coat on it. And this is the one that I showed you that was painted. And the way this works is you can actually put your phone on like so, run your power cord through, and charge it up. You can also have it so you can sit there and watch yourself on, so you can have your Zoom meetings, or like we do when we have our video conference calls with our grandkids. We can set this on the table and we both can see whatever they're doing. The other thing you can do is if you're watching your favorite movie, you can take it and turn it and put it on its side. So all you have to do is put your power cord through there, plug it in the wall, and you're ready to go. So remember, always dream, think, design, build, and learn. And I'll see you in the show.